The GT 710 is one of the most popular video cards on Amazon right now, despite its absolute clownery in video games. David Does Tech does an awesome video explaining why, but basically it's one of the cheapest video cards that supports basic video output and multiple monitors. It has VGA and DVI outputs for older desktops and HDMI for newer ones. It also doesn't require any external power, so it's the definition of plug and play. Basically, offices, schools, they eat this up. Now, if you're unlucky enough, whether by chance or by choice, to have one in your main system, then your experience gaming is probably filled with a lot of lag spikes, a lot of frame dips, probably a good amount of tears. So I snagged a 2GB GDDR5 model, which is significantly better than the GDDR3 model. If you're gonna buy one, at least go for that. And I did my own benchmarks. The numbers speak for themselves, but if you're gonna run a single 710, 1080p gaming is basically out of the question, and 900p, 1600 by 900 is your best bet if you want at least 30 FPS in esport games or in older AAA titles. This is with a pretty big overclock on the card. So after seeing this performance, I took my chances and I ordered 3 more. What happens if you had 4? And of course, how will you be able to run them all in SLI? How does this work? I've explained this on the channel before, but most NVIDIA cards actually support SLI, but they're disabled through the NVIDIA driver. Different SLI Auto is a community curated software that allows you to SLI cards that are not natively supported in SLI and allows you to SLI different models as well. You do have to run Windows in test signing mode. Now, sadly, a lot of anti-cheat softwares, specifically BattlEye, will throw false positives because you're in test signing mode. This means that a lot of popular multiplayer games are out of the question, specifically Fortnite. There have been some workarounds since I last used different SLI Auto, such as signing the drivers yourself so you don't have to use test signing mode. I'm excited to try those, and I really hope they work so we can actually play some popular games. And because this video is just so scientific, let's create a hypothesis of what we think will happen.
This is big brain time.
Now, with perfect scaling and in a perfect world, we should hit GT 1030 performance. Of course, we don't live in a perfect world, and not a lot of games nowadays actually scale well with SLI. So I'm gonna guess we're gonna hit somewhere around like 70% of GT 1030 performance with all 4 of the cards running. Just based on past experience and research, I also know that quad SLI is usually not that big of a benefit over tri SLI. So I'm gonna guess tri SLI is gonna give us the best performance, or it's gonna be the most effective means. With our hypothesis set, let's get to work. For the test bench, our CPU is the Ryzen 5 3500X. We have 16 gigs of DDR4 memory and dual channel, and we're using a 250GB SSD. Our motherboard is the Asus Crosshair 7. Different SLI Auto worked in all of the SLI configurations, thankfully, and I didn't have to use test signing mode because of a patch a community member made, so shout out to you, Statelo. Unfortunately, the overclock that I had with the single 710 was unstable, so I did a 100 MHz core and memory boost. The first game I tested was Fortnite, but it wasn't doing very hot. Unfortunately, it doesn't like SLI, and it actually performed worse because of the lower overclock. Because of the less than stellar performance, it was kind of hard for me to make my shots. Thankfully, GTA 5 is one of those games that just supports SLI so well, so with each new 710 I added, I saw a beautiful, substantial increase in performance. Now, the quad SLI setup does have issues, which I'll get into a little bit later, but overall, very happy experience. It's crazy to think that Crysis 3 still makes grown computers cry after all of these years. Similar to GTA 5 though, it scales pretty well with SLI, and I saw substantial increases as I added more cards. Again, the quad SLI setup is kind of messy, but beyond that, it did pretty well. Overwatch was a similar story to Fortnite. It doesn't like SLI that much, which contradicts my previous experience with the game, and because it's such a fast-paced shooter, having that lower performance really put me at a disadvantage. I wouldn't recommend it. And to top it off, we have our synthetic benchmarks. 3D Mark has historically done well with multiple GPUs, and this is no exception. It does pretty well with the SLI setup. Passmark, not as big of a change as I was expecting, but it's still noticeable enough to put it in a different tier. 3-way SLI gave us the best performance, but frame pacing was a big issue. While the FPS was higher and there wasn't any issues with tearing from what I could see, the inconsistent frame rate made it a very unpleasant experience. This is nothing out of the ordinary for SLI. Frame pacing is always an issue when you're using multi-GPU setups. What I found interesting was that the 4-way SLI actually lowered performance significantly and still had the frame pacing issues. I've read that 4-way SLI is more trouble than what it's worth, but this is my very first time actually seeing that manifest in person. Now, one possible reason for the lower performance was the PCIe slot that I had. I only had a PCIe by 2 slot, and that has a lower maximum bandwidth than any of the other slots on the motherboard. But I'm more inclined to believe that a GT710 wouldn't actually oversaturate a PCIe Gen 3 by 2 slot. Personally, I think it's either A, the nature of 4-way SLI, or it could just be that the driver has issues. The biggest problem that I couldn't fix was the GPU usage. A lot of the games would have only one GPU running at around 90% or higher, and the other ones would be essentially an idle. This could be issues with the driver modification. It could be that the game just simply doesn't support SLI as much as I would like it to, or it could be that the resolution wasn't high enough. For instance, in Unigine Heaven 4.0, if I used a resolution of 1600 by 900, only one of the 710s would actually run at 100% or at its rated speeds. If I upped the resolution to 1080p, they were all running at their full speed, but it wasn't playable at all. And sadly, we did not reach our goal of hitting 70% of a GT 1030. Now, we did get close in the synthetic benchmarks and in the games that actually supported SLI well, that scaled well with all of the cards. In our Tri-SLI setup, I think we hit around 65%, so we were getting there, but we just couldn't do it. And as with any Aussie video, what did I learn from this entire experience, and should you try this yourself? I think the second question is easy to answer. You probably shouldn't unless it's for fun. If you are the type of person that plays a lot of modern games, you probably won't benefit from SLI. There are specific instances like Sniper Elite, which does scale very well, but I think that's an anomaly and an exception to the rule. There's also a big debate right now that 30 FPS isn't playable, and I do think there's some truth to that. When I was playing Overwatch, I was averaging around 30 FPS with the GT710, but I definitely felt that I was disadvantaged. Now, let me preface this by saying that I'm not good at Overwatch by any means. I'm probably slightly below average, but playing at 30 FPS made me seem like I've never seen a keyboard or a mouse in my life. You could get by with some very casual gameplay, but when it came to team fights, it was very hard to keep up. In other games like GTA 5 or Crysis 3, I didn't feel a disadvantage at all. Definitely wasn't the most pleasant experience, but I could still play the game fine and enjoy it. But that's it for this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. And if you guys have any suggestions for me to improve this SLI experience, if you've ever used different SLI auto, let me know. Another question that I have, since I kind of opened up the floor towards the end of the video with this, is do you think 30 FPS is playable? Is that like an enjoyable experience for you? If so, why? If not, why not? And are there certain cases where it's okay and certain cases where it's not? Kind of like what I felt when I was doing this experiment. I think this is gonna come out on Christmas, so Merry Christmas to everyone. And follow me on all socials at OzTalksHW on everything. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.